Hi, everybody. This is Everyday Buddha Interview series number 12. And this is a series of interviews with my spiritual friends. And my name is Eddie, and today's guest is Julie Desch, right? Desch, did I say that right?
Said it right, yes.
Great, thank you. And she's a friend of mine, and we took the same course called a Finder's course a little while ago, and we didn't know each other back then, but through our mutual friends, we got to know each other. And most recently, she joined the group I was hosting, and we got to know each other pretty well. And so I'm really excited to have her and share her stories today. And what strikes me the most about her, and we kind of joke about it a lot, about her passion for learning. And she's like a perpetual student. Always she's, just now too. Like, what are you doing today? Like, oh, I'm going to a retreat. And she was toying between, should I take this course or that course, and decided on this course. So she's always exploring, learning, improving, and sharing the wisdom with other people. But there's something about her lightness, just easy smile, easy laugh, and just not attached to anything really heavy. Although she has serious chronic illness that she might mention a little bit later, but she seems to be kind of sailing through, like a fresh breeze. So that's my impression. So I'm really happy to have you today, Julie. So welcome.
Thank you. That was a lovely compliment. The love of learning, I have to fully confess, completely comes from my mother. She was like, yeah, she was like that, exactly like that.
Okay.
So I have to give her credit for that.
Mm-hmm. But as far as I know, maybe because we're in this circle of friends, most of the learning I hear about is about spirituality, this teacher, that teacher, this method. And what about your mother? What was she learning or pursuing areas?
She just loved to read. Well, so she had a pretty severe psychiatric illness. She was, at the time, there wasn't a good diagnosis because this was all decades ago. And she was severely depressed all the time. And, it's because she had 3 children, 3 of her 7 children had a fatal illness. So you can imagine that was pretty difficult for a mother. Right. And, she just broke down. She couldn't cope. And so a lot of my interaction with her growing up was difficult. I mean, not contentious or anything, it was just hard to be around her. It was very heavy. But later, as the correct diagnosis was made, she was put on correct medications. I got to see who she really, her personality kind of shone through. Wow. And yeah, she would read constantly. She liked to write. She just, was quick to smile. And when she wasn't depressed, I mean, the depression didn't really go away. She had flares. But when she wasn't depressed, I was like, wow, this was the mother that, was absent for me growing up, but she's really here now.
Wow, that's amazing story to see your own mother for the first time after many years of not knowing her, really.
Right. Exactly.
So if you don't mind, can you share the chronic illness that 3 your siblings have?
Right. So my two of my older siblings, I was the youngest of 7 kids, and 2 of my older siblings were sick a lot as young kids. They couldn't gain weight. They had a lot of respiratory problems. And so our family physician told my parents to take them to the Mayo Clinic. We grew up in Nebraska. So they drove up to Minnesota, went to the Mayo Clinic, and they were told that they had cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic illness. And they were told, this was, back in the 60s, or actually late 50s. And back then there was no treatment whatsoever. It was just, they were told to, take your kids home, love them. You're not going to have them much longer. So, but we were Catholic, and so birth control was not an option. And therefore I was born, even though actually I don't know if they fully comprehended the risk of continuing to have children, but they did, and I was born. And so as soon as I was born, I was tested immediately for it, and I had it. So then, 3 of the 7 were, they just kind of had to sit with this fact that this was in our future, the continued pulmonary problems and digestive problems and failure to thrive, essentially. But fortunately, over the years, incrementally, small things were available to do for kids with CF. So my oldest sister lived to be 31, which at the time, that was incredible. She lived way past what they told my parents. And my older brother lived to be 58, which was really incredible. So we probably in our family genetic makeup have some kind of modifier genes that, because all 3 of us did way better than expected, even though even though 2 of us have died.
And last time we talked, you mentioned the CFR, so that's cystic fibrosis retreat or research, or
there's an organization that I'm have been very involved with since I moved to California, called Cystic Fibrosis Research Institute. It's located in Palo Alto. And that's where I was. So, growing up in Nebraska, I didn't know anybody with CF except my brother and sister. But then I moved out to Palo Alto to go to medical school and found out about CFRI and got involved. And then all of a sudden I had, all these people. It's like suddenly I had a CF family in a sense. So, and ever since then, I've been very involved with CFRI. There was kind of a break in time where I was busy with my own career and then raising kids, where I kind of pulled out a little bit and didn't do much for CFRI. But then my kids grew up a little bit and I got more and more involved. And now, I mean, I could be a full-time employee, but they don't pay me.
Yeah. Before this video, I just, thought about it, and I went to the website and looked at the short video about the retreat. So there are some people talking about it, and then same thing. So outside of the retreat, you may not see anybody else with a CF, but over here, everybody has it. All the staff knows about it. They're super careful about, infections, social distancing, and cleaning everything, so they won't transmit infections, but they feel really comfortable, feel very safe and connected, and do all kinds of activities together. So that seemed like a great connection family, as you said.
Yeah, and it's interesting because CFRI is quite a bit different than the CF Foundation. The CF Foundation is this monster organization that kind of is, I don't know, kind of controls the whole research world in CF. They're based on the East Coast. CFRI is a much smaller organization on the West Coast. Both are national in terms of their outreach now, but when the CF Foundation had enough evidence that there was a risk for cross-infection, which means basically I have Pseudomonas, certain bacteria growing in my lungs, and all kinds of different bacteria grow in CF lungs because it's like a petri dish for bugs. And there's a risk when a person with CF is next to another person with CF, not a normal person without CF, because there's no cross-infection risk, but there is cross-infection risk between 2 people with CF. And so somebody who has a multi-resistant bacteria could theoretically spread it to another person with CF, and all of a sudden they have this multi-resistant bacteria. So when the CF Foundation had enough evidence that this happened on a occasional basis, they made this kind of blanket rule called the 1-person rule. And essentially they said that in any of our sponsored events, there can only be one person with cystic fibrosis allowed, indoor events. And so that meant like, you know, conventions in convention centers where thousands of doctors and parents and people go to look to learn the research. You can't, only one person with CF is invited.
Wow.
And CFRI was like, no, we can't do that. So that's just too crazy. So they have a very specific set of rules that, you know, if you're going to come to our event, you can't grow, you know, certain bacteria. And if that's the case, then you have to agree to, you know, wear a mask and blah, blah, blah. So I fully adhere to CFRI's policy. And yeah, the one person rule created a whole lot of havoc in the community and a lot of bad blood.
Okay, changing subject a little bit. What was it like to live with 6 siblings, 7 altogether? It's a big family.
Well, by the time I came along, there were really only about 3 in the house, 3 or 4.
Okay.
Because you know, my oldest sister was 15 years older than me, so I don't even remember when she went to college. She was already gone by the time a memory formed.
Okay.
And then, you know, they were every 2 years after that, 2 to 3 years. So by the time I came along, I had my next older sister who was 4 years older than me, a brother 6 years older than me.
Okay.
And then another brother who kind of lived at home. The one was CF because he worked for my dad and he kind of came home from college. And so he was around a lot. In fact, he drove me all over the place. And like he was kind of my pseudo parent for a while. So really, it was more like I was almost a single child, really, because the older kids were just not around very much. And I was totally spoiled.
Yeah, I was gonna ask whether you were really spoiled, you know, that being the last child, or just kind of left alone, like, oh, they had already 6 kids, so maybe just another kid. So either you were left alone or totally spoiled. So it sounds like
it was a little bit of both.
Yeah?
You know, I was totally left alone. They trusted me, which maybe a little bit of a mistake at times, but they trusted me. And in that case, in that sense, I was spoiled a little bit. And I also just, you know, I didn't like we had enough money, you know, I got the things that I wanted. It wasn't difficult for me to get. So in that sense, I was kind of spoiled. But I wasn't spoiled for attention, that's for sure. I mean, mom was sick and dad was really busy taking care of mom. So I didn't feel unloved, but yeah, it was just, I had to go out and kind of create my own community of friends that kind of helped me get through that time. So
that it's not like your parents are both hovering over you as your last
priest. Oh God, no. Unless I got sick. If I got sick, they were like, you're not going anywhere. For a week, I'd stay home from school with a cold, which was,
sure.
You know, when you're a kid and all you have are the sniffles, but your mom makes you stay home for an entire week. It was a little crazy.
So you can fill in if you want to, but I next want to hear about you going to Palo Alto to medical school. Why you wanted to be a physician?
I wanted to, well, initially I was going to be a veterinarian and I loved animals. I still do. But then I changed my mind when I worked for a vet for a summer and realized that it was just a lot of spaying and neutering and euthanasia. And I was like, I just didn't like that.
I see.
So then I went off to college and I loved chemistry. So I was going to be a chemistry professor.
Wow.
And I met a boyfriend who I eventually married. And through him and through other friends, I kind of was like introduced to the idea of why don't you just become a doctor? Oh, and my sister was in medical school. So I just kind of, this idea of becoming a doctor just kind of blossomed in my brain. And I thought, what I really want to do is cure CF. I was so bold. And so I thought, okay, I'll go to medical school and I'll be a researcher and I'll cure CF. So that's kind of how it came to play out. Of course, when I went to Stanford, and right when I went to Stanford is when Kathy died. And so that first year was kind of very difficult. In fact, I almost quit. I did quit. I told the dean, I'm not coming back. In my mind, she was 31 and I was 23. So in my mind, I had like 8 years to go. And why would I spend it, torturing myself in medical school? And the dean was very compassionate. He said, just go home, talk to your family. And maybe if you come back and don't work in the lab, because I was in this MD PhD program where I worked in a lab at the same time I was taking classes, and it was a lot.
Yeah.
So he said, why don't you just come back? If you come back and just let the lab stuff go, just come back and take classes and see what you think, which was very wise because I was very into what I was learning. I was just grieving and I was suffering and, So I did come back and in the class that I was taking was neuroanatomy and I was just fascinated. And I was like, I don't want to leave this. So at that time, I found a job in another lab and it was a cystic fibrosis lab at Stanford. And I worked for this guy named Jeff Wine, who's this amazing researcher in CF, has made incredible discoveries. And he became kind of like my mentor. But and it helped me pay tuition. It was just like such a piece of grace that just landed in my lap to be able to work in that lab. And but what I learned is I don't have a brain for research. Like I just didn't think that way, So I ended up going into pathology, which was weird. It goes into pathology, but I loved it. Like I'm such a nerd. I've always been like this. I opened up Robbins and Cotran, which is the pathology textbook, and I was like, oh my God, this is fascinating. And so I just went with that and became a surgical pathologist and didn't do research, but I kept reading research about CF. And, I ended up that kind of created like a base for what I do now, which is I am on the research advisory committee. I'm the chairperson of the research advisory committee for CFRI. And so what we do is we read research proposals and select which ones we're going to fund. So I was in training for the current job. I just didn't know it.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how the things works in the universe. Okay, so you worked as a pathologist for a while. Then you had a baby.
Yeah, so I didn't have the baby. I had a partner who was a woman, and we decided that we wanted to have a child. And in our discussions about this, we decided that I was going to be the stay-home mom. And it coincided with a few things happening at work. One is my health was I was not doing well. The job was in San Francisco, so it was a 45-minute commute, and it was stressful, very stressful, and my health started to tank a bit. And this was really the first time that my lungs started to manifest CF in an overt way. Like up until then, I had never had to have IV antibiotics. I'd never had to go into the hospital because of the CF. And that's almost unheard of, especially with my mutation. I have kind of the common mutation, well, 2 copies of it. So it's almost unheard of to go that long. I was in my mid-30s without having a lot of lung damage. But it started to happen. And so, and I wasn't that happy doing pathology. It just, I don't know, it just wasn't like fulfilling. So I quit and decided to be a stay-at-home mom with the baby. And then we had another baby about 2 years after that. And then we broke up. So all of a sudden I was a stay-at-home mom with these 2 babies, half time, because we split custody.
I see.
And no job. I was like, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. So then I started doing all these things that I always loved, I just started getting more and more into. Like I became certified in fitness training because exercise has always been a huge passion of mine. And I think the reason that I'm still alive and pretty well is because I've been an exercise fanatic. So I got certified in that, not because I thought I was going to train people, but just because I was so interested in exercise and how it functioned and why it was keeping me alive. But then I decided, well, maybe I could use this knowledge to help other people with CF fit exercise into their lives. And so I trained to become a wellness coach and started a nonprofit where I coached people with CF, mostly around establishing exercise regimen. So like I would design the program and kind of take them through it. And I did that for most of the years the kids were growing up. I was doing wellness coaching and helping the CF community in that way.
And then where does all this spiritual thing start to come?
Yeah.
You know, the mindfulness-based stress reduction, or, you know, TMI, or different things that I heard about, you know, you're learning. So where did that come in? So is that after all this, you know, teaching fitness to your CF people?
I think it started at my sister's deathbed because I sat with her as she was dying, and she had this deathbed experience, which I witnessed, where, I mean, she was literally like not oxygenating her brain. You could tell she wasn't there. She was just kind of counting over and over again. And it like there were no, she was on her way out. There's just no question. But all of a sudden she kind of perked up and she called out the name of her best friend who had died maybe 10 years prior in a car collision. And she called out the name of my grandmother who was not there. And it was just like, holy shit.
Wow.
She was talking to them and I was witnessing this. And, you know, I didn't, of course, I was in awe and kind of amazement, but also I was losing my sister. So that kind of took over, the grief and all of that took over. But from that experience, I was immediately fascinated by near-death experiences. I read everything available about, you know, what that was. And I just started thinking more holistically about, you know, what is this life? What is this thing, life? So I started kind of playing around with different forms of meditation early on. Like I remember I got the book by Herbert Benson, The Relaxation Response, and did that for a while. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I listened to holosync tapes for a long time.
Okay, yeah.
It kind of, these things kind of helped me relax. And then when I was working in San Francisco, and I was very stressed out at this job, I saw a flyer about a mindfulness-based stress reduction class, and I was like, oh, that's something I should do. So I signed up, took it, and that's when it really clicked to me that this meditation thing is something I need to pursue. So I can't say that, you know, automatically I had this really serious practice, but it was more like, you know, I kind of went like a sine wave, like I'd get into it for a while and then it'd fall off. I'd get into it, it'd fall off. And then probably in my late 40s or so, I started to get pretty seriously into meditation and decided to actually take a practicum and learn how to teach mindfulness-based stress reduction. Mostly, I wanted to bring it to the CF community because I had seen by then how effective it was for me. And I thought this would be a good place to bring meditation. So of course, by then, you know, this cross-infection thing was big. So I couldn't do it in person. It had to be online. So it took a couple years to for all the pieces to kind of fall into place where I could do it online and see if I could be like the sponsor or whatever for the classes. But I started doing that, and I taught that for about 3 or 4 years, several times a year. But by then I had sort of branched out and began other types of mindfulness practice.
Okay.
So that's when I found the Mind Illuminated.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing the Mind Illuminated practice for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the dedicated practitioners program. So I did it on my own for a while. And then I was like really into it. So I signed up for the dedicated practitioners program.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the people in that program was in my small group, mentioned something about this thing called the Finder's Course.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's that? Finder's Course. And as soon as I learned what the Finder's Course was, I'm like, I gotta do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was about 2.5 years ago that I did the Finder's Course. Oh, and in the interim, I also did Jack Cornfield and Tara Brock's mindfulness teacher training program.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did from that is, that was a 2-year program. Part of that program, you have to kind of design your own beginner's mindfulness class. And so as part of that, I tweaked MBSR,
Mm-hmm.
the MBSR protocol, and just kind of made it more fitted to the CF mind. So that was my, so I started teaching that. I called it Living Mindfully with CF. I did MBSR for about 4 years. Then I started teaching this Living Mindfully with CF.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, so then I did the Finder's Course.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Finder's Course, I became kind of connected, I guess, to Shinzen Young teachings. So then, because a long time ago, like back in the 20s, when I was in my 20s, Shinzen had this cassette recording of, it was called something like Running in the Zone or something in the Zone. I don't know. It was something you listen to while you run.
Okay.
And I was a big runner back then. So I used to love to listen to Shinzen.
I see.
And so when the Finder's Course came along, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So then I got into Shinzen stuff, and I got way into Shinzen stuff.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of where I am right now. I probably, if you ask me like, what is your main practice right now? It's probably the unified mindfulness stuff. And that's what I'm teaching now too.
To your CF group?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I took the foundations and then the pathways course, which is Unified Mindfulness's training to become a mindfulness coach.
Okay.
So I took that about a year ago, and so I've been teaching that, and I have another course starting in about 2 weeks.
Okay, so you're certified as a coach, wellness coach. You're certified in MBSR. You're certified in, is it the dedicated, is it the teacher program for the TMI?
No, it was just a dedicated practitioner program. And I must say, I'm not certified to teach MBSR. Now to get certified, you have to go through so many hoops to teach MBSR. Taking this practicum, I took it before the certification thing was a thing.
Oh.
So I got grandfathered in sort of to be able to teach MBSR because I had done this practicum.
But you have all these different certification, and so where you teach is only in the CF community right now?
Yes.
But it sounds like your life is always, it happens to me too. So when you're doing something and you seem like you really go into it, whatever.
Yes, I did. That is my MO.
Right. And then when you're doing it and then pursuing, accomplishing, you're getting it. And then something else appears, after that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like there's always something new arising, kind of calling me like, check me out or check me out.
Yes, yeah, totally. Yeah, I have that too. I'm about to be done with one school, and there's another school I need to go to. And when I'm pretty much done, then another certificate comes in, and I have to do that. So I can totally relate to that.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's different now. It used to be that I felt like there was this need. I had to do it. Because I was missing something, that I had to get. And it's like what I was missing was a sense of peace. Like I remember the very first therapist I ever went to, and I've been to many, asked me our very first meeting, what is it that you would like to get out of our meetings? And I'm like, I just want to be at peace. That's all I want.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was this very profound, like, inner sense of I'm lacking something really important and I need to find it. And so in the beginning, all these of all these things like MBSR for sure, Jack and Tara's course for sure, TMI for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Before I took the Finder's course, it was all like I had to do these things in order to get something.
Mm-hmm.
But now, since the Finder's course, it's a different ball game. It's more like I'm just doing it because it's fun, and I don't feel like there's a lack here that I have to, or a void that I have to fill.
Mm-hmm.
That sense is completely gone, which is so nice.
Yes.
And now it's just like I just want, like, I'm repeating the Finder's course right now, not really for any other reason other than I'm a different person. I know, a different being than I was 2.5 years ago when I took it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to see what effect it would have on this current Julie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm doing it. It's not like I think I'm going to get something new and different or new and improved.
Yeah. Well, it could be just for fun.
Yeah.
I think Idea Shanti and some other people say things about deception or misconception of lack. A lot of people, humanoids, have this kind of misunderstanding that I'm lacking something. And then you're pursuing the next thing that make them happy or peaceful. Then you get to it and, oh, that wasn't it. I have to go to the next thing. So just pursuing, forever for a lot of people until they die. They're looking for the next best thing, and that's going to complete me. A lot of people after they take the course, but some people already, there. And that's why they, go to Finders to find friends or people who speak the same language. And so I know that you are still taking, courses, Finders or other things, but even, when you came to my group too, I almost thought, like, why are you here? Like, you already at peace. You seem to be, pretty happy and calm. And so we were both, I had some other co-facilitators and we were wondering, why is Julie here? And I think she's okay. She doesn't have.
I didn't know either. I was like, I just signed up. It was just like, that whole non-doership thing. I just watched myself sign up for it. Like, apparently I'm supposed to do this. And maybe it was to meet you. I don't know.
Oh, that would be nice if that was,
Yeah, I mean,
honored if that was the case. Yeah, absolutely.
The reason I came to the Finder's course was and this, like, I was able at that point in my life to state in a finite sentence, a concept, what is it I'm looking for? And it was, I don't want to be afraid to die. And that's what I have always, like, dealt with, because, I knew from day one, when I could know anything, that I had this illness that was going to kill me. And it was like this constant knowing that that tinged everything I ever did or thought about. Is this going to make me healthy? What do I need to avoid? Like, all of it. It was just, so I taking the Finder's course. I remember I talked to Eric, who was my mentor. At some point in the very beginning, I said, I just want to stop being afraid of dying. And he was like, okay, that's easy. And the funny thing is, that happened. Like, I don't have fear. The fear is gone. I think is why, what drives me to want to teach meditation to people with an illness like CF. It's like, because that fear is such a block for so much happiness and peace and beauty that you can perceive once the fear is gone. Like, it's night and day when the fear is gone.
So for you, how did that happen? Was it gradual while you are studying different things, or it's not like an overnight thing, something you did one meditation at one point and it's gone? So it was gradual.
It was gradual.
Yeah.
I think just going through the practices, working with my therapist,
Mm-hmm.
continuing to, during COVID, I was really, I mean, there wasn't anything else to do, right? Except because, you know, with CF, I had to be super uber careful. So I was very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to do these day-long retreats once a week where I'd go to, we have a place in Napa. So I just go off by myself one day a week. And I did more and more multi-day retreats during COVID. So just, I really kind of dove into my personal practice during the last 18, 20 months, however long it's been.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, I don't know, that fear has just kind of been slowly washed away. I can't point to a certain time when it just happened, but I remember in the middle of one of my talks with my therapist, I said, you know, I don't think I'm afraid of dying anymore. And I told that to my son. I remember my oldest son, I was reading a book on near-death experience. And I was like talking to him about it, and I just told him, you know what? The weirdest thing has happened where I'm reading this stuff now, and it's like, there's no fear. I'm almost looking forward to it. And I realized at the time, I probably should not have said that to him. He's like, what, Mom? What are you talking about? And I'm like, okay, no, don't worry. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm kind of looking forward to like finding out what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fear's just not there anymore.
It's funny. I was talking to Eric yesterday, your mentor, Eric, and he made a comment like if he was asked at gunpoint, you know, he could be dying, or somebody's, you know, pointing a gun at him, and who are you? And he would say, I'm awareness. So, you know, we were asking him, like, are you body, mind, awareness? How do you exist? And body kind of dropped away. I used to have this, you know, Eric still, you know, still had that even after the first awakening experience. He still had that kind of sense of, you know, somebody's kind of in this compartment. But that's dropped away. So if somebody really asked me, and you know, at gunpoint and, you know, life and death, I just have to say I'm awareness. So there's no fear, anxiety, everything drops away. Do you teach meditation or talk about meditation with your sons, or so that he might understand where you're coming from when you make a comment like that?
I sneak it in every once in a while, but I don't, like the other day, I was talking to him about something he was very stressed out about. And the night before, I had listened to Eckhart Tolle has a 90-minute documentary on YouTube where he's talking, this 24-year-old man is interviewing him. And so it's this discussion with this guy, and they made it into a documentary. And I had watched it a long time ago, before I really understood what Eckhart Tolle was talking about. These days I listen to Eckhart and it's like, it makes so much sense. Whereas before I knew there was something there. I kept listening to him, but I wasn't getting it. But anyway, so I rewatched it. And then I had this call with Phoenix, and I'm like, I'm going to send you this YouTube video. Because he was totally stressed out. And I will pay you $1 million to listen to it. And of course, because he's at college now, he's really busy. And he's like, Mom, I don't have time to watch a 90-minute video. And I'm like, okay, but just remember, $1 million. And I don't have $1 million. I'm not going to give him $1 million. But he put it in his, like, you know, he copied the link and put it in his daily plan or whatever. To important lesson from Mom, I must listen. So we'll see. I mean, that's kind of the way I do it. I just slide in comments every now and then.
I see.
Like with my younger son, who deals with a lot of anxiety, I'll just ask him every once in a while, do you really think that, you know, I'll do a little Byron Katie kind of talk to him. You sure that thought is true? You know, just a little bit. But if I were to like preach to them, it would just, it wouldn't work. What I usually say is, I wish I would have known this at your age.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
So do you think about dying still often, or it's just not
no, I
so
don't.
much on your plate, because since you're not afraid of it, you don't even have to think about it so much. If it come, it come. You might be even looking forward to it, but so it's not something.
Well, so serendipity of being the last born has provided to me access to this medication over the last 2 years, which has completely transformed the way I feel and the way CF affects my body.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a medicine called Tricafta, which works for my defect, my mutation, I mean, and it kind of corrects the protein mutation.
Okay.
Doesn't completely fix it, but it corrects it enough that I almost have, like, I don't cough anymore. And if you would have told me even 5 years ago that I could take a pill and suddenly I'm going to stop coughing, I never would have believed you. So I haven't been in the hospital. I haven't been sick for like 3 years now. And before I started taking pills like Tricafta, before Tricafta, I was on a different one that kept me out of the hospital, but it didn't take away my cough. So it was getting better and better and better. Anyway, so if like I haven't been faced with a situation where that fear would arise, because I haven't been sick. So I'm kind of like, this sounds weird, but yeah, I don't know how I'm going to respond when that happens. I don't think I'm going to be afraid like I have been in the past, but I honestly don't know. And no, I don't really think about it much at all.
So right now, what you think about is what else can you learn? What classes you going to do for?
Why? For some reason, by the grace of God or whatever, I'm still here at 60, almost 61.
Okay.
And there must be a reason I'm still here. So I'm just going to like soak it all up and learn as much as I can and be as happy as I can be while I am here to enjoy it.
So what else is on your bucket list?
I want to be a grandma, but I'm not in control of that. So we'll see what happens with that one. I mean, the funny thing is when the kids were born, my goal at the time was to live long enough to see them graduate high school.
Oh, wow.
And now, shifting. So travel definitely is possible now. I mean, not because of COVID. Once COVID is not such an issue, travel, places where I was a little afraid to go before, like overseas, I wouldn't even consider it because I needed to be near a hospital. And now it's like, I don't need to be near a hospital. I just have to remember to bring my pills with me.
So where would you like to go to?
I want to go back to Costa Rica. I was there once when I was young, in my early 30s, before I ever got sick at all. And it was beautiful. So I'd love to go back there. I'd like to go to Europe. I'd like to be able to just, like, I have a group of friends that go back, some of them go all the way back to elementary school. And we get together once a year. So there are 9 women that get together once a year. And one of the women has a house in Crested Butte, Colorado, which is pretty high elevation. And I could never go to it before, or I told myself I could never go to it before because of the elevation in my lungs, because there was a fear of bleeding. I had hemoptysis once at elevation, and that was pretty traumatic. So from that point on, I was like, I can't go to anything above 5,000 feet, or I'm going to have hemoptysis and potentially die. Well, that thought is nowhere in my awareness anymore. So I want to go to Crested Butte and meet my friends. I don't have a lot of specific things I want to do, but I just want to wring out all of the joy and beauty that I can in life that I have left.
Well, I'm sure something will pop up, something else will call you, Julie, come to Costa Rica, or Julie, come to Russia, or
right.
Yeah, I'm sure there's something. Yeah. Okay, so well, almost an hour. So, well, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to end with?
Not really, other than I adore the POK community. I mean, that has been like, the finder's course was one thing,
Mm-hmm.
kind of got me sort of onto the continuum or whatever, if you want to use that model.
Mm-hmm.
But that community, the POK community, has definitely like been, I mean, Sangha is everything. And that has been kind of my Sangha. And I couldn't be more grateful for having that available. Even though everything's online and, you know, over Zoom, it's still so powerful and it's so important.
Right. POK is for graduates, alumni of Finders, just in case some people don't know that. Anyway, I feel the same way. Yeah, Finders is one thing, but all the group, the friends, you know, after we finish, and then we all kind of on the same page, speak the same language, we understand each other. So,
right, because it's most people in the world don't, you know, want to talk about this stuff or don't know to be interested. So,
right.
Like, you know, to have people who really understand what you're talking about when you describe how you can't stop staring at a tree. Like most people would say, what is wrong with you? But
right.
But the POK community is like, yeah, I know what you mean.
Totally. Right. Yeah, it's a very special group that we can be, you know, we can say things like kind of could be crazy things that in the outside world, but you know, yeah, it's a safe space.
I think it's important to be able to like come to people, other people with questions and experiences, and like there was a time where I felt very ungrounded, untethered, sort of a dark night of the soulish kind of experience. And I was able to talk to other people about it, and it just really helped, you know, that because even my therapist was like, maybe you should talk to the Spiritual Emergency Network, you know, or Spiritual Emergence Network. And but it, you know, it's not just for you know, I don't know, talking about meditation, but sometimes it's really helpful to be able to like talk to somebody who's further along the path and can like reassure you that you're not going crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I am very grateful. I think many people actually feel the same way, you know, just the group, you know, after the course, the support and the friendship, the connection is amazing. So, well, with that, thank you so much, Julie, for your time,
You're welcome,
your
Eddie.
story. All right. Thanks so much.
Fabulous rest of your day.
You have a